only updates since the last time is as we are progressing along in the journey with Embark, also the pitch also needs to get more firmed up and aligned with that. So obviously where we want to understand the background of the founders, which industry you're targeting, which customers you are after, and some of you had a very good vision already in the last round, but for the rest of you also get a more clearer vision of what you are heading towards, or what is the goal, what the solution. Again, thanks again, Steve. Any quick thoughts, quick comments you want to make before we get started, or?
No, just looking forward to hearing the pitches and updates. Yes, good luck, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve.
Likewise, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so this is the schedule for today. I know Pago, Meta, a couple of those teams requested to be in the first half. So Amy, if you can get started, I'll stop sharing and you can go ahead.
Okay, sounds good. Good morning, everybody. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Meet Allison. Allison is a millennial. She's a working professional in San Francisco who is searching for more connection and meaning in her life. Allison misses her family who lives on the other side of the country, especially her beloved 95-year-old grandmother. Meet Dorothy. She's 87 years old and lives alone. Dorothy loves spending time with loved ones and losing herself in a good book, but can no longer read for long stretches of time. Like Allison, Dorothy misses family and longs for more social connection. Now meet Pago. Pago is a platform built on exchanging acts of kindness where people like Allison and Dorothy can give and receive in various ways. Now more than ever, loneliness and social isolation is a serious public health issue affecting all generations. Pago has a solution. Here's what Allison will see when she logs into our app. She can filter by proximity, age groups, and virtual or in-person opportunities. Allison will find Dorothy, who has created a profile looking for someone to take a walk with her. She can message Dorothy directly, schedule a time to meet, or she can save Dorothy's profile and come back to it later. Pago also enables individuals to give to their community financially by helping people pay for their groceries. Neighbors can create a grocery list of items they need. Individuals click on the items they want to buy for someone else, and then purchased items are shipped directly to that person's home address. Perhaps Dorothy, who previously was the recipient of a kind act, wants to pay it forward by giving financially to James, who is in need of groceries. James simply creates a profile, posts a request, and Dorothy can now see his cart and help James and his family. Giving USA reported that Americans gave $471 billion in 2020 towards charitable donations. 70% of this giving comes from individuals. Studies have shown that millennials are the most engaged demographic in terms of charitable giving. Pago will target this population in order to promote good health and well-being for all ages. My name is Amy Pago, and I have been in fintech for more than 15 years in sales, product, and strategy. I have two co-founders, Alana Green, who will focus on community partnerships, and Kadir Nawaz, who will focus on laying our technical foundation. We are a public benefit corporation that is creating a kindness marketplace and local community exchange from those with means to those in need. Whether you have an interest in giving your time financially or with your time, we invite you to pay it forward and join our kindness movement. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Alina, I request you to go ahead.
Good morning, and
feedback, please.
Yes, thank you, Amy. Great presentation. As reiterate that we gave you previous feedback, great story, great visuals, very nice and fluid. So my mindset primed for this week to see more about the industry and market, because that was some of the bullet points that we noted for this presentation. And I know this is a short pitch, but if you could dive in a little bit, I mean, especially for the investor presentation, because they will be looking into opportunity of your market segmentation. So the total market, you addressed the charitable giving, you highlighted some of the numbers, where did they come from, millennials, maybe there's more information on the crowdfunding or peer-to-peer, or like some kind of more in-depth that you can say out of this 400 billion, there's actually about this market that we're targeting. So it looks more segmented, and you can provide, So this is the not just by the demographic, but the type of donations, because it includes charities like church, other organizations. So if there's any more insight on kind of like a peer-to-peer or support or online crowdfunding type of donations, that would also support your case.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to work that in with the time consideration. So I had just put it up on the slide to show that like this is how we go from the 471 million, the 70% is individuals, and then the millennials specifically have specific criteria that gets us to this TAM. Do you think that in the presentation it's important that I speak about the TAM specifically just to address that the sizing piece of it?
So it's good to say, okay, this is the industry, but this is where we're going after, right? Like, so you do need to talk about, and that's going to take you into go-to-market strategy. So the next expectations will be, you'll tell us like, how are you going to go there? I mean, we don't have time for this, but that's kind of like a thought process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Yes, great presentation. I like your visuals. Again, everything that Alina said, I think sounds great. Good recommendations. I would also say that a little bit more technically, since we're talking about financial and time, those are the two exchanges of value here. It'd be nice to see more visually, just a couple of simple use cases. Financially, what are the different ways that you can help through the platform? And in terms of time, what are the different ways you can contribute? Connecting more the needs and the wants, I think that will help a little bit more to solidify the vision. And then the other thing is that I would try to pilot test it. You've got the user personas, specific use case, but having more people that would vouch for wanting to use this service or really thinking that this is something they would use might bolster your case. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks. Next, you're there.
I'm here.
Yeah. Welcome, Margaret.
Okay, remember how to share a screen here.
Not pretty good. All
right, well, thank you for being here, this time with the slides. So let me introduce you to Haptic, Ben from Neurohaptics. Those are Eugene and Stefan. They both are gamers. Eugene is trying everything new. He loves the VR as well. He has a little problem. He has a VR sickness. So he's looking for a convenient content and hardware that will allow him to play comfortably. And Stefan is a developer. He spends many hours on console games. He didn't try the VR yet because it doesn't have his favorite games translated into the VR mode yet. So he's waiting for the right opportunity. The virtual reality market size is valued over $6.5 billion today and predicted to grow exponentially in the next decade. 170 million people are using the VR today, and 60 of them are in the US. Oops. But there is still a problem. VR considered to be an unfulfilled promise. It's not lived to its potential yet, mostly because of the lack of content offerings. Not everything still translated into the VR. And the second big issue is the user experience. And the biggest part of this user experience is motion sickness. About 40% of the users are still somehow affected by motion sickness after 50 minutes of use. So we have a solution for it. Our device is a haptic force feedback that is adding a new peripheral that can improve the bed experience in the VR and enhance the immersion. It can be worn by itself, or it can be also integrated into the headset. And there is no competing technology on the market today that's addressing both the VR sickness and the immersion. We are targeting several customers for the VR experience. The gaming platform manufacturers, it will boost the useful quality content and improve the user retention rate. For the VR equipment manufacturers, it will integrate into the head.
2 minutes are done, Margaret.
Up? That's
Yeah, but yeah, you can take a few more seconds to wrap it up.
okay. So they can grow their user base. Both VR game developers and the console game developers, they can take the old games, translate them into the VR, and regain the market for the second time. And this is our team. I have two co-founders, both with. So myself, Eugene is our CTO. He had a previous exit and sold his company to AMD. And Coleman Fong, he's in Austin. He's the owner of Blue Goji Corporation. He's a lecturer at Berkeley, and he's supporting us on the VR side. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. Steve, you want to go first for this?
Sure. So it's great that I see there's an evolution in the presentation. Very, very well done. I see the product now. I think I somewhat understand what the product looks like. It does generate more questions in terms of how it works. Is there any way that you could just discuss high level how this works, how it nullifies the motion sickness? And also, have you tested this with people that have motion sickness? And can you at least say that in X number of cases, do you have any sort of MVP that you've tested? I think that would be very, very compelling. The market itself is great, but I think we have to understand that or see that the product works. I think that's most of my main feedback for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Lena?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. It was great to see it and great to see physical objects. So now we can visualize it. It was actually really good to see at the end also the team slide, since you have a very strong team. So that was very good to give you credibility and support in that. I completely agree. If you can tell us a little bit more, if it's not proprietary or confidential, just at least how it works, or you can say it is a proprietary new disruptive technology that you're going to disclose when you get a term sheet. What it is.
I could explain, but I need an additional minute.
Yes. Well, it just highlight. It could be a sentence or two sentences, just something that gives kind of like when investors hear, it's like, oh, okay, that sounds interesting, or it's something new, or maybe I've heard something about it. So you get a teaser. Just give at least a teaser to talk about what it is, and then how it works, and then the due diligence, questions, Q&A, more things can come out. But a great presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. Next up is meta events. Ioannis, Purnima, Grish.
Hello, give me 1 minute to present my screen.
Sure.
Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
So, hello everyone. I'm Yannis, a computer science undergrad from Greece, and I'm one of the 3 co-founders of Meta Events, along with Purnima and Giris. Remote work is here to stay. We have all experienced it. Many of you probably still work remotely. It has a lot of benefits. No commuting, less cost, but it comes with no connection. This is what we got from the customer interviews. People did not feel connected to their co-workers, not as much as before. What was built in years was almost lost during the pandemic. Many would argue, though, that in terms of productivity, sometimes we're even better than before remote work. However, we lost creativity. A study conducted by Microsoft recently revealed that remote work has a negative effect on creativity. There's a direct link to how collaboration time is spent, and more specifically, what people spend their time working on or the information they pursue. If no one goes out to investigate new fields of interest or take a deeper look into emerging trends, then creativity and innovation will be hurt. Steve Jobs had a reason to design Apple's office in the way he did. He designed the building to encourage people to mingle by chance, so the creative process could happen naturally. At Meta Events, we build online personalized metaverse spaces for businesses and organizations. Our goal is to bring the natural co-workers interaction back. We're doing that by creating spaces that mimic the real office architecture of the company. Employees can have personalized offices where they can have meetings, and companies can have lounges for their employees so they can bump to each other and talk. We are aware that we cannot bring the experience of working in person back, but what we can do is to improve the experience of remote work for all the employees. Remote work is a new reality, and businesses have to adapt. We are here to make that easier and more fun for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Johannes. You have 15 more seconds left, just so that you know. Good. Alina, can you please provide your feedback?
Thank you for the presentation. Nice slides, good graphic, very simple, straightforward. I like that you dived in a lot into the problem. Sorry, my Siri's talking. Dive into the problem, and you expanded the problem. I would say if you had the same time, if you only want to cover the problem and solution, I would actually focus more on the solution, because the problem side is somewhat, at least, the executives and VCs, they understand the disconnection and say, like, we know this is a problem, and you can throw a couple numbers, you reference the study, this is great, but then focus on the solution and like, how do you solve that problem? And you did mention that, we cannot substitute in-person experience, but we're improving. If you can add any more study, reference, anything that can support the improvement, the experience improvement. It's because it will come down to ROI, right? Why do I pay money for your software versus something else? So you need to provide some kind of reference that you're actually improving or testing or piloting, or anything that you can provide in support of your solution. So that will make your case a little bit stronger.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Yes, thank you. Just one general comment I wanted to make is for everyone, I know that you have the 2-minute time frame, but speaking faster to put more information in doesn't necessarily make it clearer. Just be aware of that. You do want to speak a little bit slower, everyone, and make sure that you use the accents and the pauses for effect. There's some communications training out there that would be good in this case, because less oftentimes is more. That's just one comment for everyone, especially because we're multilingual here and some people understand more or less or deliver the message in different ways. That said, I heard one key item here, which is creativity is lost. I think you've got something there. I would also say that there's a social bonding aspect of remote work or remote meetings that's not there. There's also a burnout factor, and there's mindfulness, and there is understanding what the hybrid workforce of tomorrow looks like or feels like. I would say that if you can go into a product like some of the games like World of Warcraft or Fortnite or one of some of these, and understand what keeps people going back to these metaverses and find sort of a parallel to the workplace, I think you've got something interesting. You really have to show why would I log in on a daily basis other than being forced to. I think that's key. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks. Next up is Van Gui and Eric from, awesome.
Eric. Sorry. Hi, everyone. We're the team of Final Say. We're both computer science majors. Bongo is strong in tech strategy and sales, and I'm strong in software development and telecommunications. So stating your last respects already are welcome and comfortable. The main problems are that it's an expensive and tedious process, the fear of death, apathy, lack of knowledge, and feeling too young to be thinking about it. To lend perspective to the size of this issue, it is estimated that in most countries, between 40 and 70% of adults do not have a will. And for most of the developing world, this statistic is even worse. Our target is the end-of-life industry, which has come about through a series of broad societal shifts around end-of-life planning. From customized caskets to creating memorial objects from cremated ashes, startups across the globe have been scaling up offerings aimed at end-of-life planning and at memorializing the departed. The end-of-life industry works in an ecosystem to provide holistic services along with other industries such as legal, finance and insurance, and healthcare. So Wangui, who are we solving for?
We are solving for Tina. Tina is 37 years old, she's divorced and has 2 children, and she doesn't have enough information about knowledge of end-of-life decisions, and she found it expensive and tedious the first time around. We're solving for Joe and Susan, who are retired and have children and grandchildren. They have investments that they want to distribute, and they're also thinking about advanced healthcare directives. We're solving for Sine and Chebet, who are in their mid-30s, they're married, they have children, and the pandemic made them think about the things that they want to do before they die. They also want to ensure a nest egg and have their decisions documented. And lastly, we're solving for Ivy, who is 23, just completed her first degree. She doesn't have any assets to speak of as much, but she's very specific on what she wants to happen once she dies. So how would this work? We would have them sign up and we would get to know them so that we can customize their experience. We educate them on end-of-life planning, have them assign 3 custodians who they would want to send their final document to, select the preferred service. And from these services, we would have your last respects, your will, advanced healthcare directives, and even bucket list. We would then add any supporting services such as life insurance, health insurance, and finally, when with a complete document, send out their notifications to their custodians. When the time comes, all this information will be shared with their custodians as specified within their final say. In the end, we aim to have a highly empathetic, simple, cost-effective, and informative avenue for people to document and eventually distribute their final say. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Anu. You just went 10 to 12 seconds over, but great. Thanks for the pitch. Alina, over to you.
Sure. Hi, Wangui and Derek. Thank you for the presentation.
Hey.
Great to
Hi.
see the slides. It's nice that you have a story walkthrough. You gave different personas, profiles. So it gives you kind of like a sneak peek into target segmentation, market. So for future, you could explore more of that. You can provide a little bit more market data specifically, you know, and it's for everyone speaking. Like the next mindset will be like, what's your go-to-market strategy, right? So this will be the industry, your target market. If you can provide any data, I know sometimes it's hard to find, especially in your geographic location, but if you can, you know, especially on segmentation, then the next questions will be, what's the go-to-market strategy? But overall, it was nice to see, you know, what problem you're solving, you're aligning that problem with the solution, you provide the solution. All that user interface is still not clear, but that's okay. I think you give enough teaser for people to want to know more. And that's a good thing. So I want to congratulate you on the great presentation. Yeah, some of the slides could be improved with less wording. So you can make them, you know, more, you know, less is more in that sense. But overall, it's a good presentation. Thanks.
Thanks, Lena. Steve?
Yes, thank you. My first comment is if you have anything developed in terms of a demo website, that might be good to know, something that people can see after the fact. Have you, for any of these user personas, have you interviewed anyone and gotten any opinions about how they feel or what they think of the service you're trying to offer? If so, it might be good to include some reference to that. I think there's a roadmap to this because there's a lot of products for all the different user personas. Maybe thinking about a roadmap for a next presentation of where you would start, what services you would start with, and then probably add them on sequentially. There was one slide where you were showing the process steps of entering the site. I think it would be interesting to have something similar, but not so much as the process steps, but actually what products are available, what products you think will be available on the site, sort of. I think we need someone to go on mute. Giannis, if you could go on mute, thank you. And then the last point was, I think that was the last one. Thank you. If it wasn't clear, let me know.
Sorry, just repeat the last one. Yeah.
Okay, so my last point was that it would be interesting to define a little bit more what you think the product line is that you would put on the site, regardless of when you would do, and that would help you maybe with a roadmap. What's the most needed service at the beginning? Okay. And then you would sort of have a roadmap of how you would add the value-added services. Of all these user personas, which do you think is your key customer now? Maybe the older couple is versus the younger. I don't know. I would not speculate on that because I think every person graduating university should have a financial advisor and should plan for future, because if they did, they'd be millionaires, every single one of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Eric and Wangui, for your presentation.
Amit, before you go further, can you maybe remind everyone to go on mute? Because I'm having difficulty hearing the comments.
Yeah, I was trying to, yeah, absolutely. Please, everyone who is not presenting or speaking, kindly be on mute. There is a bit of disturbance. Next up, so I just received some other comments that few people will have to either swap or will not be able to present today. So I've made slight modifications, but should work well for everyone. I saw Grish on the call as well. Grish, you are up next, Parking Reimagined.
Sure, Amit. Thanks. Everyone, my name is Girish Kejriwal, and our business idea is Parking Reimagined. Today, we are not using any slides for this demo day. So there are more than 1.4 billion motor vehicles in use across the globe, and their number is increasing at an unprecedented rate. Now, the problem with cars is that they need a lot of storage space. Almost 14 to 15% of the space required for cars is taken up by the city's land usage. At any given time during the day, almost a third of the cars on the city streets are searching for parking, contributing to more pollution, more traffic, more greenhouse gases. And we want to alleviate this problem by allowing these cars to be parked in residential complexes in those spots assigned to cars that are either commuting to work or running some errands or in use. Our solution is a two-sided marketplace which will provide real-time availability of parking in a neighborhood. Hosts can start renting out their parking spaces, and guests can reserve parking in advance using a very simple, easy-to-use app interface. For this, we will charge a convenience fee for matching the hosts and the guests, and a small percentage of the total transaction amount. Our expenses are primarily going to be around the parking partnerships, the platform support, and customer acquisition. Currently, we are in a prototyping phase based on a number of interviews that we conducted in numerous cities across the developing world. These are our primary markets. Later on, as we scale up, we will add cities from the developed world also. As a team, we are a bunch of technology optimists, curious entrepreneurs who want to solve everyday problems. In the past, we have co-founded other companies or worked in leadership positions in our organizations. Thank you.
Thanks, Girish. You also had 15 extra seconds left, but good job. Steve, you want to go first on this one?
Sure, thank you. I think that the tone and the pace of your presentation is very good. I think that having visuals would be valuable. Some of the things that we discussed last time, I think the idea comes through more clearly, but the devil's in the details. You said that you had interviews in many markets. So which one of those markets would you start with? I don't think you're going to start with all the markets unless you have a major capital investment. Where would you start and why? That's one of the key things. And if you've already started, do you have any customer testimonials of using your service? Walk us through sort of a customer journey. If you have more than one, different between the users and the providers of space, maybe just have a graphic that shows these are some of the different opportunities we're looking at within a target market. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina.
Thank you for the presentation. So I honestly got a little bit confused because for the previous time when we talked, when you presented, I had an idea that you'd be working with the cities or maybe at least that was the perception that you will get some kind of partnerships to get access to some additional lots or additional not utilized space within the city. So now it sounds like you're talking about the residential area and the hosts are individuals. Is that like somebody's house or apartment complex? Is that different?
It varies from cities to city. In some cities, what happens is the host can directly go and then rent it on our marketplace. Whereas in some cases, you have to reach out to the managing committee of the condominiums. They will then do the valid requirements gathering in terms of, does it meet their security requirements or not, and then give us the approval. So it could be a two-step process for us in that case.
Okay, so in that case, that needs to be super clear. You can say there's two ways how we can do it. We're starting with this one because X, Y, and Z, because it's easily attainable. You don't need to get partnerships, or maybe you do need to get partnerships, but you have a lot of availability. Another one, what I'm hearing is that assumption that the residential area is close enough to where people work, so they can park their car and they can just walk to their business. So there also might be a certain geographic location. So I think if you actually give us an example, say, okay, we're starting with this city, we're going to be scaling in those cities. And because of the infrastructure in the city, this is our model. We're going to partner with, municipalities. We're going to partner with certain, apartment complexes, whoever that is. Or you can say there's residential area right next to the downtown or right next to the high, office occupancy buildings. So we're going to be having a model of, two-sided market with the hosts, the actual individuals who have houses and they have empty parking space. It kind of like letting the parking spot for rent or something like that. So it needs to be super clear because again, the problem is more or less understood. There's a lot of cars. We have overpopulation, urban cities, dense, all that stuff. There are solutions, especially in different cities in developed worlds. There might be some in developing that is different. So if you say we're targeting this demographic, we're going after this type of cities, and this is the city as an example, and this is how it's going to work. And you can say, okay, after this, we're going to go X, Y, and Z. That's going to be part of your product roadmap, your geographic expansion, whatnot. But at least it'll give some clarity with specificity what exactly you're doing. Because I was a little bit confused at first. From what I remember was one, now it's a little bit more on the host, and customer relationship.
Right. No, absolutely. I think this is great feedback, Ina. And let me just, if I can take a couple of minutes here and expand on it. So for the first demo day, what we had tried to do was, we had a scope which was much larger and much bigger. And, it gave you the grand vision in terms of what we want to do across cities in the world. And today we kind of, basically narrowed it down, saying that we just want to focus on a particular area. And we will work with the city authorities, the urban planners at a much later stage, because this becomes a low-hanging fruit for us at this point. Working with city authorities will take us a lot more time. So that is still part on our roadmap, but we will tackle it, once we are scaling up. So we will refine our stories accordingly. I mean, thank you. This is great feedback.
Sure. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Girish. Thanks, Alina. Oops, sorry, my dog suddenly became active. Up next, Ponto Predict. Tiago, Solo, you're here.
Good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Tiago. I'm from Ponto Predict. I'm here in Brazil, and let's go. First of all, we make headcount optimization. Is the first idea. So we share our presentation in these topics: companies issues, how we solve, what we are, and where we're going. First of all, we take official data here from Brazil and analyze them. We observe that when the hirings grow, voluntary turnover grow equally. So this is a problem for all companies in Brazil, and I don't know if it's just in Brazil, but they have to manage hiring and turnover, headcount costs, customer experience to be more profitable. So how do we solve that? We take data from all data sources that is involved in the company, like employee experience, medical certificates, payroll, voice of customers, and all of that. We mining the data, and we taking a kind of like turnover predictor, headcount dimensions, dashboards, and bot automation. Nowadays, we are positioned between work software that makes workforce and HR software that takes some kind of turnover insights. But we deliver headcount dimension, and we work with artificial intelligence too. And we have nowadays 11 collaborators and 3 clients. This is our team. Part of them is full-time, 4 of them is full-time, and the rest is part-time. So we have a SaaS mode, and we sharing our software business in these lanes, like standard, social, future, and smart scale. We have
Tiago, you're already off your time, so if you can wrap it up soon.
Yeah, and thanks. I finished that.
Thanks, Tiago. Yeah.
Sure. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was nice to see the flow of the slide. I liked that you outlining the problem. I cannot say there's still some questions that you can provide, again, specifically on the data, supporting data, because you already have some clients, right? So if you can showcase if there's any information that you provide, okay, well, before this was the problem in our clients, it's sort of like a customer journey, user journey, but you already have customers or partners say, this is the problem that they had. or this is the 3 or 5 issues, or maybe it's a combination of factors, right? And then that was before. And then we created custom unique AI based on all of these data mining points that we collected. And this is the result. So if you just show that, and you kind of like show before and after, or you show this, or maybe incremental steps, we say we partnered, we launched for 3 months, 3 weeks, or a year, whatever that is, and you see the improvement, that's going to be better than anything else that you're going to be, convincing us that your product it works or anything else, because that's going to be customer data. You actually provide the data. Since you're a data-driven company, right? So just show us that data. That's going to be super strong presentation if you provide that.
Yeah. I have some testimonials by the clients, but I don't have space to put in this presentation, but I will improve that. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Alina.
Yes, okay, well, that was a good presentation, clean and clear. I would suggest making some space, some presentation real estate space for the testimonials, because it's really important. I do a little bit of work in this space, and I can tell you that if what you're analyzing for some of those key drivers, like Alina said, I would almost call them qualifications, where you have, this is the problem, this is what we applied against it, these were some of the solutions to the customer. We reduced turnover X percentage. Get into the numbers a little bit. You don't have to talk about what company, but maybe you can say what the head count was like, so we get a sense of scale. 5,000 employees, they reduced turnover by this much. So that's one item. The other thing I wanted to say was, so follow on to the data and some of the things that you recommend to them. There's going to be a sort of a consulting follow-on to this. You can tell them you're going to want to help them to instrument certain activities to reduce their costs. Not only tell them where to reduce, but maybe you can also build the solution, not only identify the problem. So you can always leave it to them to build the solution, but maybe you can help them resolve. And if that's what you're planning to do, that piece is not clear in the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chief. Thanks, Thiago, for the presentation. Next, gig economy.
Okay. Everybody can see my screen?
Yes.
There's over 200,000 middle market companies earning over $11 trillion. Some of the founders of these firms opted out of a university degree, while others have impressive CVs from branded universities. The data suggests they win because they're high quality management teams, street level business acumen, innovation, and common business language. Of the 200,000 firms, 951 firms went public in 2021. The remaining 199,000 are owned by a mix of private equity and family firms. According to Forbes, 85%, that's about 169,000, are private and don't always know what tools to use or aspire to grow. The remaining 15%, or 29,000 firms, are private equity owned and aspire to grow, 2 visions with 2 very different outcomes. About 0.5% are turned away from seed capital each year. That's nearly 14,000 firms. That's a lot of rejection. We can help these firms become more attracted to seed investment. Today, we're only helping about 1%. Firms are facing complex problems. PitchBook, Yield Street, and Spike Ventures all say some companies are stuck earning under 10 million because they don't know exactly how to fix their growth problem. Firms need to become more attracted to seed investors at 20 million. They're stuck for many reasons. One big reason is the lack of smart skills to develop and execute strategy and innovation. So how do they make themselves more attractive? With better thinking, let's see here. With better thinking and strategy and innovation, the lead gig economy solves problems faster, with less cost and less risk by matching Stanford lead executives to problems using elite teams. We connect standard branded knowledge by using our app to find, match, and marry. Better solutions, better knowledge, and wiser spending. So good companies are seeking smarter solutions. Our journey has discovered customers with an affinity towards Stanford branded knowledge. Customer examples are a bank, parts distributor, and a cherry farmer. We aim to expand this group to thousands of companies and hundreds of leaders. The gig economy is not holding back, so why should we? Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Steve, you want to go first?
Sure. I think this is a very interesting problem. I think it's real. I have to say that in my background, you mentioned a company, Flooring America. I actually consulted with the franchise of CCA Global, which is one of their competitors or within that market. And there's a lot of smaller companies that are missing some of the basics to be able to grow. And I can say by my own experience, I give a course on cash flow management for small business. I had 600 people in the room and you could hear a pin basic cash flow management. So there is a market here. I think it's very interesting. I'd like to see how you set it up. It looks good. It needs a little bit more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. That's a really encouraging news. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah.
Thank you, Ron. Great presentations. Nice to see the slides. You're a storyteller. So in the beginning, there was a very big, warm, nice story, kind of like warming everyone up and warming up the audience for the fix, because people actually, once they get the idea, like our brain works like, what's next? Tell us more, tell us more. So once we understand, okay, well, we get that there are businesses that they have the problem, they don't have good resources, maybe they don't have enough, they cannot access resources, whatever. What next? How actually that happens, right? Like what's going to happen? So if you can dive into details, so especially for this audience, we understand the problem. And for investors, they're super fast, they're sharp. You don't need to digest. Like the stories are great, but like take that story from the beginning, the problem, and then expand that story. It's like, well, this is the problem, this is the solution, this is how we deliver, like this is the value, basically kind of like the end-to-end journey to highlight. And then of course, later the market will transition to business model. And then in your case, since I know some of your challenges, you need to highlight your go-to-market strategy, how you're going to get the actual, how you're going to acquire this middle market companies, right? So that's going to be the value proposition to the businesses, how you're going to get them, and so on.
Perfect.
Yes, but thank you for the presentation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Leah. Thanks, Ron. Up next is team of Lala, Mesret. I see you here, Mesret and team. If you can present.
Sure. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, just a second. Yeah. Hi, my name is Mesret Ouet, and this is Awlalla, a content-driven B2B and B2C e-commerce marketplace platform for the Ethiopian market. Oh, my slide is not progressing. So current online shopping in Ethiopia is emerging, but not via these formal means. Instead, a very informal approach is serving the market, in which suppliers design and post amateur sales ads on social media channels, and buyers call and place their orders, and sellers ship their orders to the buyers. This is very problematic for the sellers, both sellers and buyers. For sellers, it's messy and costly to manage their posts on these social media channels, and it needs expertise to design their sales ads. And for buyers, it's usually a hit and miss, trying to get exactly the product they want to receive due to the amateur sales ads. Team just launched Awlalla.com. Team Soaso launched Awlalla.com to address this. But who is Soaso? Soaso is Africa's local content crowdsourcing platform. aka since its launch about 5 years ago, it's achieved key traction milestones in terms of articles curated, user base, and platform traffic. And its newly launched platform, Awlalla.com, is a state-of-the-art market e-commerce platform that puts rich multilingual content at the center of everything. The combination of these two offerings will give us a strong market entry in terms of a strong user base to create the initial tractions, rich multilingual content to augment the product listings, and a powerful e-commerce platform to automate transaction end-to-end. Our revenue stream is from professional services and transaction handling.
Mr. Your time is up.
Yeah, sure. So the subscription-based offering, sellers will get access to our user base, multilingual content edition service, and custom landing page. And the market is big in Ethiopia, almost 17% growth by 2025. And we have a database of about 306 licensed business entities to access to, and we're looking for investment to drive adoption. Thank you.
Aina, want to go first?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Great slides. You focused, I like that you focused a little bit more on the synergy between the core parent company and your kind of subsidiary to leverage existing infrastructure. So you're using existing user base and trying to drive them to your new platform, which is great that if you can do that. Still from the previous presentation, I had some questions in mind. If you have any specific segmentation on the type of products or the industry or anything segmentation on the B2B side in order to drive your customer acquisition. So let's say if it is a specific type of products that you will be selling initially, or if you're, and the market will dictate that. If there's more demand, or if there's the frequency of purchases of some items, or maybe there's a category of items by sort of price tag, maybe certain more expensive products, people want to research more, or maybe they want to negotiate more, or maybe they want to get more offers online. So, and the reason why that is important, because your customer acquisition strategy and the user acquisition strategy will be different. So if you say your customer is B2B, you need to know what of those businesses you're going to be attracting. If you just go all around everywhere, it's going to be very expensive. So it's good to start kind of like more or less narrow, that you really know that you're going to get good ROI from that channel, and then expand it into other products and services. So that might be category of goods, maybe it's an industry, maybe it's some range or price range of higher, more expensive items, whatever that is. But it'll be easier for you to get customers in the specific industry and have dominating sort of like that presence that people know they're going to go to you, and then you're going to add on additional products and services with businesses that you'll recruit and have working with you.
Right, got it. Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks, Elena. Steve.
Yes, thank you. So one of the key points here is if you can find or buy a book on the history of Amazon, eBay, and equivalents, I would spend the money to buy the books, buy the research, and how these companies form, because your path could be very similar to them, and there's no point in reinventing the wheel when you can have that information at your fingertips. There's a couple things always to keep in mind, and these are things that I don't know, but something that you do want to know. How comfortable are people paying online? This was a problem in many markets. I don't know what it's like in your market. Broadband penetration rates. Do you have the type of speed and downloads that will allow you to use a site like this? I'm assuming yes, but I don't know. Data analytics for anything that you do on this site is king. If somebody should know every aspect of customer journey, even on the beta, you want to know exactly what that customer does and how many times they move the mouse. It's all about analytics these days. The payment tool and having some sort of intermediary in case something goes wrong, like what PayPal might be, or what some of these, not only payment processing, but having sort of an intermediary, that was a very important step for a lot of transactional sites, including the Amazons and the eBays and even the Airbnbs of the world. Product type, I will repeat that, that's really important, especially because you see how many billions companies like Amazon have spent in logistics. Before you start down that path, you also want to understand what is within your logistics capabilities in terms of like products, logistically speaking. I think that will save you some of the headache instead of spreading too far out initially. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Ashrit, for the presentation. Moving on to the neuro insights. I brought you up because of some teams who did not. I saw that you were online. We want to go next.
Yeah, I'll do that. Just a second.
Sure.
Sorry.
I have to jumble up a few teams to because I just got update from two others that they will not be able to make it. So
No worries. Am I audible and is my screen visible?
yes, on both accounts.
Okay. So the time is very short for each of us. Look on the problem. The problem is that what we are looking for is that as of today, if I sit here and then look forward, as a person who wants to completely get into management and then move out from coding, it's not the right sign. And then there are people who look for automating things and then look for making the organization flatter and then don't want the middle management to be there in existence at all. So that's a problem statement which made me to look and then ponder and then interact with people. And with my peer and most of the people who have interacted, this problem is there, the career progression and the ladder. And career progression ladder happens by not only honing skills, but also there needs to be a tool beyond what we learn and then gain knowledge, where we need to implement. There need not be a degree which plays a role to upstep your career. So that makes me to ponder and then to come with a solution, which is a neo-social, where people form and then group together to ponder on what is that best way how a software professional get into the management position by sharing with each other. It's not only about the best practices, but also the insights which is learned over the period by understanding a person, by the insights which we get of nuances of a person helps to present the way how we wanted to convey the feedback. There are ways which we are through. So it could be from learning a person by pattern matching or the brain, or it could be of a number of ways which has been put forth and then worked on. So if I look today in this market, there are people who are already doing coachings and then building up the database and then connecting people. What differentiating factor which I put forth is that to have the human nature of interactions and then also to have a building community which would focus more on building self to come out by understanding their behavioral pattern. And that's uniqueness which we would like to bring forth through neo-social. Looking forward for your input and looking forward to grow together. Probably software professional is the area which I'm comfortable to take forth. That's a specific industry which I've chosen. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. You want to provide your feedback first?
Sure. So I think if I understood correctly, a good presentation, clear in terms of the visuals. If I understood correctly, you're trying to help software professionals gain the knowledge, skills, experience, and the nuances to become leaders and sort of take the technical cap off and switch to a management cap. I think you mentioned coaching. I think that's an important piece that's currently in the market. I'd like to see how you're proposing that your ecosystem will provide that value add. I think it's a combination of people talking and people coaching and having executive coaches as part of your ecosystem. I think there is a real need for what you're proposing. I've been in teams where it's a daily translation between leadership and technical staff. So I really do see the need. I'd like to see how you propose what the use cases are for solving that within your product.
Thanks, Alina.
Thank you for the presentation. I have to be honest with you. While I was listening to it, my mind was going so many different directions. And usually you don't want that to happen with the audience or with the investors, because they might think one thing, and then if you take a different turn, they have to refocus and then focus, okay, well, so that's not that, that's this. You started off with the problem, with the general problem. And I was figuring out like, okay, well, where are you going with this? Right. And so if you give us kind of like, if you want to prime like our brains, if you want to prime it so we know what you're talking about. And then you can say, yes, well, so this is a general problem for everyone. And again, in my mind was thinking like, okay, well, is it for businesses? Is it like a business problem? Who has that problem within business? Is it HR problem? Is it for, what's the demographic? Who is the actual customer user? Is there a specific, career path somebody's taking? So there's lots of questions going on in my head. Ideally, you'll bring clarity to the presentation. So then when people watch your presentation, they know exactly what you're doing, or at least enough to get people curious. But now I actually have so many questions, the more clarifying questions to just understand, to just wrap around. And then the last thing that you said that, there's lots of these different coaching platforms and then connecting type of platforms, but you're going to do it by understanding human factor or behavioral factor. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? So that's brought even more questions. I mean, these are good questions, but I think what you could do is to actually organize some of these thoughts and maybe you want to tell a story from the user perspective, and the story could be one user, a couple of users, and say, well, these folks, they have this problem, and in general this is a big enough problem between different social groups. That's why we're connecting them into this one platform that provide maybe some tools or assistance or services, whatnot, using maybe some kind of behavioral factors, which is you also need to tell us what they are, and that's kind of will come together. But at least for now, I have a lot more questions than answers. So hopefully, by the next presentation, we'll get a little bit more structured or organized to show, that just maybe simple things. Start with the user journey or customer journey and say, okay, well, these are users and this is our customer. Because again, and then I'm going, I know for longer than I should, but I think clarity will be helpful. And if you want to tell a story from the general problem, just dive right in. Who are the users? What's the core problem that you're solving for them? Because that could go different directions. But thank you.
I'd just like to say one more thing. And Alina, thank you for reminding. I did find a disconnect in the 80% of PM tasks will be eliminated. Be careful with that statement. I've worked with RPA companies directly on their teams, and it's a lot harder than it looks. So, and I don't think it really lends any credibility to the problem you're trying to solve. The software professional will still have the problems regardless of what's automated or not. So thank you.
Thanks, Lina. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for your presentation. And looking forward to the next one is Wealth Next Gen. Anjan, you want to go next?
All right. Thank you very much. Let me share the screen right now. Good morning.
Morning.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Okay. So we're Team Wealth Next Gen. We are a B2B, B2C platform for financial planning and portfolio analytics. Our mission is to bring institutional level investment expertise to individual investors with a focus on younger generations. So younger generations are great beneficiaries of the great wealth transfer, which is expected to be anywhere between $30 to $70 trillion in the coming decades. Young generations, in particular millennials and Gen Z, are struggling financially, according to multiple studies, including this one by Deloitte in 2022. And yet they are reluctant to seek financial professionals' help. Why is it? It's because if you look at most of the current offerings, they adopt a product-centric approach where investors are categorized into groups and offerings are cookie-cutter recommendations. Our offering is based on human-centered design, where investors are treated as unique individuals, portfolio recommendations are personalized, and investors can fully express their preferences. So meet Ashley, our persona. Ashley is 30 years old, college educated, works in the Silicon Valley, and passionate about making an impact. So below, I will show you a few screenshots of our current prototype. So Ashley wants her portfolio to include all asset classes, but not Apple stock and Bitcoins because she already has owned quite a bit of it. She doesn't want tobacco stocks because she cares about the environment and so on and so forth. So based on her preferences, we recommended portfolio for her only. That's mostly equities, some bonds, commodities, and cryptocurrencies. That's crypto excluding Bitcoin. And there's various exposure to sectors as well as a portfolio simulation with various scenarios. So last but not least, meet the team. We have on average 20 plus years of experience in the investment management industry and passionate about helping investors achieve their financial goals. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Alina, want to go first?
Sure. Thank you for the presentation. It's really nice to see the breakdown of kind of like your core value proposition. How are you different? So I like the human-centric approach. And what I got it from that you can actually customize some of the portfolio based on the preferences. Let's say if I'm against, my views against tobacco or some other industries that I do not want to include that. So that's good. I actually think there might be more kind of like juiced out of that to provide more value proposition as part of your marketing, PR, and branding for investment bankers to actually highlight this value proposition and say, before you just give your money and somebody else will put the money or you give your return. Right now, impact investing is a big trend. There's a lot of impact investors. Maybe there's an aspect for that, or incorporate impact investing as part of the portfolio and say, okay, between different, asset types or between different avenues where you can invest money, you can actually, invest in some impact investing funds as an example, or some other ways. I think that's going to be very valuable for especially new generation, as you highlighted, the persona types, to know that their monies, they're not just making money, but they're actually making money and doing something good. But overall, great presentation, great team. Yes, nice slides, organized, and nice to see the prototype as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Over to you, Steve.
Sure, thank you. Very good presentation. I definitely think there's a market here. What I would say is that your user persona is sort of a sweet spot, because that person living in California, in San Diego, San Francisco, that person with postgraduate, they're probably financially somewhat stable. It may not be the only user persona that you're serving. You may have people with smaller portfolios that could also benefit from this. And the way your model works, it doesn't look like a lot of the functionality in choosing your portfolio is based on your interests. So as long as the motor runs that way and you have plenty of selections for the customer, it doesn't add to cost or personalization. That's where the real difficulty is for self-directed versus having an advisor and the cost involved. I was going to suggest some other categories are maybe those companies that use animals for testing or animal testing free, maybe some sort of ESG sustainability strategy. Give more options on some of these other areas. I think that would resonate even more with your target audience. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's our plan, to use CI ESG scores or some to allow for more wider set of choices. Absolutely. Thank you so much for your very valuable input.
Thanks, Steve. And thanks, Anjan, for the presentation. Up next, Team Plume, Abhi. Abhi,
hello everyone, yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I got a bad eye infection, so I'm not going to switch on my video. I'll share my screen. So if you remember, last time I gave you some appalling facts about the fashion industry. This time, I'm going to tell you how we at Plume are one step closer to creating a positive impact. There's a reason why we chose not so high fashion garment like school uniforms. Children grow fast, means the waste is more. But more importantly, for a mother like this, today she's got no option to buy sustainable uniforms at a decent price point and conveniently recycle them. There are problems at every stage from start to finish. So we venture out to build an honest business model where an eco-conscious mother can feel assured that everything she buys is produced without harming the planet, using an affordable subscription with valuable benefits such as refreshing her uniforms every few months for fresh pair, or being able to swap at any time during the subscription, and at the end of it, returning the uniforms back to us with an assurance that everything will be recycled. This is a massive impact. I also want to take a moment to tell you how sustainability is built into our business model at every stage. Our products, of course, are circular with the recycle aspect, and we aim to help children to lead a low carbon lifestyle from early on. And of course, we wish to create an impact in the fashion industry, that is the third most polluting industry in the world today, by leading with an example. We choose school uniforms through our concept and go on from there. This is us, me and my co-founder, both Abbeys, and next time we're going to tell you how we aim to go to market with Plume. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. Steve, want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I thought it was, your slides are very clean and clear. I thought it was very interesting how you have an episodic perspective to the demo days. So you're leaving something for the next meeting. What I would say is that I'd be interested in knowing what do you think is the profit margin, profitability, if you're working for a profit in this business, how you would achieve that? Are there any examples of companies, large companies like Cintas, who does a lot of uniform type work, that are doing this recycling type thing? I know of other businesses that are recycling, that are sort of leasing materials and then bringing them back in an a year period and recycling them. So it's a closed circuit. It's a good idea. The question is, what do the numbers look like? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your feedback. Yes, we are working on the financial model. Of course, we won't venture into it if there's no profits, but the circularity, when I say we have circular products, so some of them will be returned and reused or remade into something else. So all of that will be baked into that profit model. But yeah, we'll tell you more.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, great presentation as before. Nice graphics. There are a couple of things that I was hopeful to hear more on the segmentation market and industry. And the reason is that, I mean, yes, so this numbers, when you talk about the number of uniforms, so there are two, I mean, there's different customer acquisition strategies, and you're going to talk about more for the next, but I think for this, at least what we got to highlight, we wanted to focus on the market and industry. And if you could give a highlight, and like, what does the industry look like, you know, in UK, Europe, US?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and then maybe that's coming part of your go-to-market
No,
strategy.
not really. I thought I did get your feedback last time, Alina. I do remember that. That's the reason, because you did say, could you tell us what's the geography you're working on and what's the market size? And that's why I wrote, of course, in 2 minutes, it's very hard to.
Yes, absolutely.
I wanted to.
Those are going to be your fundamentals for your financial model, right? You would need to know and forecast all of that and the market penetration. So I think it's still coming. So we're looking forward to next.
No, this is for you. This slide is for you.
Thank you.
That is a well-known fact. I mean, it is published results. So people do spend exactly about 2.1 billion. That's how much British parents spend on school uniforms. There's about 8.5 million students who go to school every year. That number doesn't vary much. Every year it's very, very stable, plus or minus. And of course, with uniforms come recession, pandemic, whatever, you still need to wear them. So it's quite.
Can I make one more comment? I think what's very important as you close out your model, the collection of recycled materials is very important. It's probably one of the toughest parts. I mean, even aluminum recycling, it's still complicated logistically. And that's been around for years and years. So the logistics of recycling is very important that you think about. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It is sorted. I can tell you that. So yeah, that's cool. So any other feedback?
That's good. Thank you.
Thanks, Avi. Thanks, Alina and Steve. Up next, are you back? You want to go next?
Yeah, if possible, a few more minutes. My meeting's too
Oh,
delayed.
okay, sure. I think we have
Thank you.
Shrikant. I saw you. Shrikant, you want to go next now?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, awesome.
Sharing screens. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Good morning. So 94% of security breaches today are identity related, as per IDSA. There is an identity sprawl. The challenge is to centrally manage identity and access management controls because of multiple point solutions, including your identity providers, your HR sources, your various point solutions. So this creates blind spots and gaps. Today, operations people are facing an overwhelming number of security alerts to manually address the problem. Security analysts lack right skill sets to come up with a solution. Companies rely on custom scripts and manual remediation, which are not sustainable and also vulnerable for threats. So the solution is to come up with a SOAR platform, which is orchestrate, automate, and respond. And this is a term coined by Gartner. It's an emerging area. They are coming up with a magic quadrant as well. So the idea is to orchestrate, connect various disparate tools, bring the visibility in a single dashboard so that there can be a real-time monitoring and incident response. You also connect with your security incident management systems like ServiceNow, and then automate using the repetitive manual processes by automating your playbooks. So the current SOAR platforms, there are a handful of them like Splunk, SOAR, Swimlane, PhishER, etc. They are too broad. They are not IAM focused. They're expensive and they need specific skill sets. So our product, looks, and this is a snapshot of, what your identity statistics will look like. What are the identities updated and failed, and if there is an incident, an incident gets open in your ServiceNow tool, and there you have the option to fetch data based on various parameters and also make it a more real-time dashboard. Now, this is also a snapshot of what your health metrics would look like, right? Now, a SOC analyst or a security analyst.
Shrikant, your 2 minutes are up, so you can pace yourself.
Okay, so they have to go to various screens to fetch the data. So we are giving a centralized platform, and this is a snapshot of various cloud statistics that can be pulled. And then finally, the automation. These are some of the examples of the automation assets, like provisioning, deprovisioning, and you have the option of create automation assets on the go. And then we are also creating a community to collaborate with other experts in the industry so that the lessons learned and the use cases can be shared. So organizations need a SOAR platform path more than ever to reach the low ops and no ops goal today. Thank you. And sorry for going over.
No worries. Thanks, Shrikant. You want to go first on this one?
Sure. Thank you so much for giving the insight of how I think that's the previous feedback or question was like, how are you going to do all that? So this is great to see that some of the prototype and thinking that you put behind the strategy and methodology, how you're planning to do that. This is definitely a good, like a follow-up question, or maybe if you have more time to talk about the solution, you can dive in and to say, okay, well, this is our solution and this is how it's going to work. This is how it's going to look. I think for the sake of this short presentation, you might want to kind of condense it a bit and say, okay, well, this is the problem. And I think from the previous presentation, you're also highlighting the numbers of the market opportunity. So if you can put like the problem, the market opportunity, and then there's existing solutions, but what they're not doing is this. And this is where you can highlight the key differentiating factor. So if of all of these, of the source system, if you can highlight the key differentiating factor for, maybe at the higher perspective, or if there's something specific, that will give you kind of like a good validation that you've got something. And if you want to show like a quick list screenshots or the examples of your actual the prototypes, this will be good. But I think we have to find a way how to condense it a bit. So you tell a whole story, you answer in the question of how different you are and how you're doing this. but at the same time, you have time to talk about other things as well.
Thank you, Elena. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Lena. Steve?
Yes, thank you. So just a couple of things. I think that there's some key positioning that this product does. The orchestrate automate.
Right.
I think that's if you were to just break down orchestrate in plain English, what does that mean? What does orchestration mean in this context? And then automate for all three of those. And I say that just because some of us are technical and probably understand, and others may fly right over them. I think Alina already talked about why your store platform is better than others. I think that has to be clear. But I like the demo and what you show here. But I think it's a one step before this. I would continue the orchestrate, respond, automate as explaining what you're trying to do and why it's better. Follow through with that through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks.
Yeah, I can go. Thank you.
Okay, awesome.
But let me figure out how to share it.
And while Yuri shares, do we have Zinjin here now? I don't see it.
So what we are doing, we analyze climate and we predict certain specific risks, and we target 3 types of customers. So our first customer is Max. He's a software engineer looking to buy his first house and figuring out do he need to make some modification of it. Our second target customer is Amanda, and she wants to buy a house for her head retirement. And our last customer is Chelsea, who is making decisions about building new facility location or protect existing infrastructure. So what we do and how? So we provide house level or home level climate risk assessment and also identify vulnerabilities. So based on climate models, based on artificial intelligence, physics, and satellite images. So for instance, we provide a risk evaluation for extreme disasters such as droughts or hurricanes or hail. And we also realize what are the long-term patterns, climate change patterns in this area. So we have the first version of our prototype ready. I would be happy if you join to test it. So here are a couple of screenshots from it. So what we provide for Max. For Max, we help him to understand what kind of remodeling should he do for the house. Should he install solar panels, air conditioners? Probably not now, but maybe in a few years. So we also help him to understand his expenses by realizing what will be his projected insurance cost based on the risk exposure for this area. So right now we have 14 persons who are testing the service, mostly my former PhD students, who are right of the same profile as Max. So second is Amanda, and for her, we figure out, well, what would be the climate disasters in her area, what it look like in the next 20 years. We help her.
Your 2 minutes are up, so you can break accordingly.
Okay, so and our last customer who is making decisions about the company, and here we have our first customers where we are about to sign contracts. So it's AIG and Societe Generale. We help them to improve their existing climate disaster risk solutions. So, and also 2 major customers, US DOE and Department of Defense, and with them we are working on protecting critical infrastructure. So, and furthermore, beyond money, we get some data in exchange for service. So here is a team. So I myself worked for the government for a few years. So that's why it's easy to enter this market. So my former postdoc advisor, he helps us to obtain the European market. And the last member of our team, he is responsible for operations and also try to help us Asian market. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. You want to go first?
So I did see the presentation last time. It's good. I like the user personas. I would say that there are certain critical drivers in the user personas that you might show what their critical differences are, because some of the things that Max is looking at, Chelsea and Amanda might also be looking at. I would maybe highlight some of the key differences in their need. I know that you had them in the presentation, but they're sort of buried within all the details. So there's a lot of data here. A little bit less data might help in the user persona piece. what I would also say is, since you're covering many markets, do you have a plan of where you're going to start first organically? Do you have a sort of an inroad somewhere first? That's kind of where I would leave it for now. But I think it, as I mentioned last time, I think it's a good product, and but I'd like to see a roadmap. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much. So we're supposed to start with B2C market, but surprisingly, well, my last couple of trips to Washington were successful, and that's why we'll probably start with B2B market and government funding. So, and also they could provide us some extra data which could help crucially improve the service. That's why we start with that, and step by step we'll enter the B2C market. And next time, I will put it on the slides.
I would also say that some of the long-term, some of the environmental sort of long-term views for retirement, I think environmentally we're past that. In other words, you could have a catastrophic damage tomorrow. So even long-term planning to me is like short-term planning. Just a thought. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Alina, over to you.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I like the user profile, the story. It was interesting, captivating. I might have mentioned to you that I had an environmental company, data company, well back like 10 years ago, that unfortunately nobody wanted to buy that data. So B2C didn't really work for us. The problem was and that you might have also with the customer acquisition. And a lot of times users would want to get that data, but nobody would want to pay for it, unfortunately. So unless it comes out as part of the report, or maybe environmental report, or some kind of risk report, when somebody's buying a house, somebody still has to pay for it, right? So in order for you to make money. So my gut feeling would be, if you have already direction going in the B2C, just focus in B2B, go to the B2B. If you have customers, if your customers line up, it's a different sales cycle. It's a different focus. It's going to be really hard for you to go both ways at the same time, just the pure lack of resources, right? But if you have lined up customers, pilots, testing, anything, that might be a good route for you to go. And then from that perspective, the Chelsea would be the B2B customer, right? So not just putting her as part of it with Amanda and Max, because those are separate, those are B2C, just separating, say, okay, B2B customer is this. And if you still want to go B2C first, you can say, okay, well, starting with this segment, maybe you want to start with them to validate your model. Maybe that could be part of your kind of strategy. But then say, okay, well, in our roadmap, we're going into B2B segment. And then so the Chelsea would be the business. And then her profile would be business profile. It's not going to be just an individual, but it's going to be what type of businesses need this type of environmental climate data, right? And then you can, segment and say this is the market opportunity, this is the business model, and so on and so on. But it's great congratulations on the prospects with DOE and DOD. I've worked with them as well. It's hard to get those contracts. So if you can highlight that, the value proposition and what is unique, that information and tool you're going to provide versus, let's say, other insurance companies, they don't have that yet. Like, why would they use your tool? Maybe you gather some additional climate data or have climate models that are not easily available. So that would be definitely added benefit for you.
Yeah, I will add the slide next time. So we are still trying to kind of enter the B2C market on Max side, because, well, actually I have about maybe 60 my former PhD students who just graduated, who are now somewhere in the US, and we are trying to enter this market through like the last year university media for those ones who just entered the big tech companies, say from University of Washington or Stanford or Berkeley, and kind of advertise this type of reports through student media, and kind of adjust them based on last year graduates or first year big tech employee needs.
I do want to make just one comment. What you also might want to look at, since you're already targeting government, when you look at public sector infrastructure buildings, and you look at private sector conglomerates, real estate groups, the data may become part of their portfolio risk assessment, right? So you have large organizations that manage thousands of pieces of real estate, and they may not want to be in certain markets due to exposure. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Alina, Steve, and Yuri. Nice presentation. I have I can't see Preeti from DigiCloset or Jingjing from AI for Zero Waste. I think that was probably the last presentation for today. We still have 20 odd minutes, and I know some of the teams which went early, they did not get as much time for discussions because I was too conservative on the time. So if there are any questions, and if Alina and Steve still have a few more minutes to spare, maybe I would request to, if there are any questions anyone wants to bring up for a quick chat, that would be good. Yeah, Amy, you had something.
Yeah, thank you so much, Raman. I appreciate that. Alina, maybe you can go over a little bit deeper, like segmentation and market sizing and such, because everybody in general had that same feedback from you. So like for Pago, as an example, our sizing was based on like where the revenue will come from. So we're focused on like the millennials and such, because I think that's like a really good target for revenue opportunities, but it's really broad, right? So as far as like the kindness platform goes, that can really be anybody. We can target senior citizens certainly, but because it's so broad, it's tough to do that type of sizing. So help me think about segmentation and where you think it might apply best, if you don't mind.
Sure. So there's different types of segmentation that we can have, right? So you gave an examples of demographic segmentation. There's, you can have a typical like any based on the income or economic factors, right? Segmentation. But there's other segmentation types of psychographic segmentation. It's what's the psychographic profile of your market. Behavioral. It's the type of behavior that your users or customers would have. Geographic is a very common one by geographies, and just lifestyle. You can have this different segmentation. The easier one, geographic, demographic, and any kind of the numbers on economic segmentations. Those will be relevant. And in your case, simple thing, if you have, let's say, a person who is in San Francisco versus the same person, the same age, the same disposable income in, let's say, I would say Nebraska, somewhere in Nebraska, they will fall in the same category by segmentation, but would there be same or different psychographic profile? Would they also be doing the same thing behaviorally in order to engage in the social activities? Would there be charitable giving for them? There might be certain communities, there might be certain types of customers or users that will actually be your customers. They're doing something, they're already doing something. You're not changing their behavior. They're already doing something similar. And you're going to try to find how many of those, people within that category of, let's say, millennials, how many of them engage in these behaviors. And there's some products or services, they're geographically basically agnostic, where it doesn't really matter, it's an online tool. But for the customer acquisition strategy, especially if it is local, there might be, in your case, let's say it's a local community and you're trying to help a local senior citizen. That's a different versus like, oh, I'm helping some dude, in another state. So in your case, geographic segmentation make more sense, because you will have your group of customers and group of users within around the same geographic location. So the charitable giving and the behavioral characteristics and how they donate, maybe they donate to local charities, maybe donate to local, shelters or whatnot, local organizations, which usually people do that rather than some big organizations. These behavioral and psychographic characteristics are important. And for a lot of B2C type of products, nowadays, these behavioral characteristics, psychographic, are more important sometimes in geographies or even income, because people who, they might have smaller disposable income, but if they believe at the cause, they might be willing to put money, they might be willing to put, or support someone, just purely based on their lifestyle.
Understood. Thank you very much. That's super helpful.
Sure. Thank you.
I want to also mention that I think there's an exercise in the art of the possible. And what I mean by that is, if you really talk to people of all talk to more people in these categories with the right key questions. It's really digging into the user personas. One thing that you know is that, if you have parents or grandparents of older age, transport is a problem, right? Getting around is a difficulty. That might be a target service that you can help to provide. There's no insurance that covers dental. So for people who are living off a specific retirement paycheck, dental is one of the biggest expenditures other than major medical. And insurance policies, as you age out, insurance policies, they get more expensive. What is that for older people? If you look at people who have family that live within a significant distance from them, what sort of things do they wish they could do for their families? Maybe attend to be in a birthday, but maybe they want to send them a birthday cake. These logistics, some of these may be doable, but I think there's going to be a lot of questions that you might want to ask until you find maybe a service or product that you can provide and continue to build it that way. It's a hit or miss, but I think there's a lot of things there. I think there's also a piece about just communication and connection with folks, that mindfulness and that ability to maintain a communication with folks, whether they be family or not. That's sort of the service side, not so much the financial. So I think the more you talk to folks, you may be able to get some more creative ideas that people consider or thinking about. I know that there was one gentleman I knew who started a site many years ago, and he sold it, which you could actually go to a website, and this is before you had sort of all the logistics of birthdays, and you could buy specific products for a birthday of a specific person, but it was all on one site. You asked for the product, they would source it and send it to the person as something very personal and custom. So, these days it's a little bit easier to do that, but those kind of ideas are there. If they have a favorite product or a favorite thing, maybe, I don't know, I'd almost even say having a group of singers show up to a house for a birthday. I've seen services like that work over in South America, and they're fantastic. 6 singers show up, they sing you happy birthday, they bring a cake, and it feels very personal. So anyways, just some ideas. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate it.
Yes, if I may share just a quick, because I teach on entrepreneurship, so that's my core. If I can share an example for everyone to see as an example of psychographic and behavioral segmentation for consumer markets. So if you segmented a woman by income, even geographic location, or maybe by lifestyle, saying, hey, well, somebody who likes biking, or somebody who's into biking or cycling. Well, just think about all of these different user profiles that you can get out of it. The person who bikes or just using stationary bike at home, right? It's a different profile for someone who's recreationally driving outside or like riding a bike with their family. These are all different types of bikes. So if the segmentation was the same for this would be somewhat wrong, because somebody who likes to bike outside, they would not buy a stationary bike for home because they like to go outside with their family. At the same time, if you look at professional athletes who are biking, certain hours and mileages, they'll be quite different than these bikers who like to just get together and enjoy biking recreationally. So that's the one example where it is, once you dive deeper in the customer acquisition and segmentation, psychographic and behavioral characteristics actually matter. And they matter more because, even if you look somebody who's doing stationary bike, maybe somebody doesn't like to bike at home, on stationary, they need to have this kick of being with everyone else. So this community and how they do it and what is this experience, that nowadays it matters a lot more. And your messaging will have to relate to their experiences so they can see themselves how they do that, if they're doing with the community, if they do it by themselves, if they do it with their family and whatnot. So this is just one example how, need to be careful how we segment and actually show what is our market opportunity and who's our customer.
Makes sense. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Can I ask a question on that, Alina?
Yes.
It's Abby. So I don't know if you remember, but the last time when we were talking about persona, for example, on that mothers who they are usually the ones who buy school uniforms for their children. We said, here's a mother who's eco-conscious and subscribes to Netflix. So that'll make it really hard. What do you mean in terms of segmentation? And I said there are, 8 million school children in the UK. And do we then segment out the ones who are probably more sustainability or eco-conscious, and then someone who would be willing to, move to a subscription model, someone who subscribes to Netflix? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, so it is a combination of two. So when we don't know, we're making new product, we don't know if we're actually hitting, where we're creating these customer personas, which actually like hypothesis of, for us to think like, okay, well, they might have a problem. They might have like, our product, we're trying to dream that, they all love it. But the reality, why we need to persona and why we need the customer interviews, that you go out, we create this 6 different profiles of women biking, right? You go out and you talk to all of them. You interview them, and then you test your hypothesis. Which of them will actually be a better fit with the value proposition, with the product that you already created, as an example. The opposite scenario is going to be where you go out, you talk to all of them, and identify who has a better need, and then you create product for them. So it's like, sometimes you have a product and you're trying to find the market, versus you have a market, you have a problem, and then you create a product for that market. So in your case, you kind of have a solution like, okay, we'll have this uniforms, and we try to identify which of the behavioral and psychographic characteristics of persona will be better fit for adoption for your specific product, right? And the only way to test it out is go out, talk to them, interview. And I just want to be, again, mindful of the fact that some of the behaviors, the traits of the behaviors, somebody, they say they're eco-conscious, but if they're not doing anything, they won't do it. To change behavior is really, really hard. So you need to show that the current demographic is actually doing something. So they're already engaging in the behaviors. So for them, it's easier to adjust or easier to adopt. Then your sales pitch will be, hey, you're already doing eco-conscious activities. You're already doing this. You're already recycling. You care about this, right? So you don't have to change your behavior much. We're offering you additional thing that you can do to kind of augment their experience and augment their behavior practices. So that's a little bit different versus coming up and saying like, hey, you've been buying uniform, which is not eco-conscious or not, recyclable. So now change your behavior and now do what we want you to do. So that would be a little bit different. So you do need to be actually getting into the mindset of your demographic and identify that segment where you can start before you get mass adoption. I'm talking about the very early adoption, but for everyone, you need to kind of nail that market to
So
get
do you
into
think we
that.
we will understand that in our next step, which is prototyping?
Yeah. But you can, before you even have a prototype, you can already talk to these profiles, have different profiles, talk to people.
No. So yes, sorry to stop you. Yes, we have spoken, right? That's the interviews. But exactly the point you said. People say, yeah, I am eco-conscious, I'm sustainable, I will do it. But it's not until they take the money out of their pocket, right? So basically that's a bit.
Ask questions. Are you doing something? What are you already doing? What are they already doing? If
We have a bigger problem there. They are already putting their clothes in the charity bag and giving to charity. We have a problem of education. That's, again, it's not ideal, but unfortunately, none of these people, or 8 out of 10, don't know that the clothes they give to charity end up in landfill. They don't get recycled.
But just, and I'm going to give it to Steve, but just one point, it's not also clothes across other activities. If it's user profile, what else are they doing? Are they doing anything else besides, recycling or reusing clothes or buying second, whatever that is, right? Other activities too. So that's part of your overall profile. So Stephen, I want to give it to you.
Thanks, Alina.
So I just have one comment there, in that sometimes it's a mixture of, building that empathy and also the financials. So one question that I would have is, what sort of Are there some schools that sell the uniforms? Are there some, in some cases, do you have to buy clothes that match the uniform? Who are you pitching this to? That's one question. I'm not sure because I didn't go to that type of private school, so I'm not sure. Maybe it's private school, maybe it's public school. I'm not entirely sure which one. Okay, all schools. Now, what I would say is that if you have internally a sense of what your cost is for a recycled clothing versus something that they would buy in the market, if the pricing is equivalent or not, is it a little bit more expensive? What kind of production capability would you need to be able to produce something that's similarly priced, where at the end of the day, if the buyer is not spending any more money because you're able to sell at scale, maybe you overcome the financial burden or the barrier. So I'm not sure what that number is or how far it is, but I would look at that as one of the selling points.
I'm smiling, Steve, because of course you cannot get, sustainably made clothes, or like I say, produced with love at the same price point. And with school uniforms, I mean, that's the reason I said this is a not so high fashion garment. Everybody else is working on the other end of the spectrum, addressing the high fashion garments. Why are we doing this at the lowest? Nobody cares for uniforms, and you can get them for £4 or £5 for a t-shirt. It's impossible to get to that price point. Okay, I can just answer that now. We don't know how much more. We are doing that exercise now, but of course, an organically produced cotton t-shirt is not going to be the same price point. So that's the answer, half of the answer. The other answer is we are basically spreading out it's going to cost you more, but it's not one time. That's the magic. We are basically spreading it out so that the customer doesn't realize, or they do realize, but at least it's not a pinch on their wallet. So they're not spending 50% more to buy, some uniform that's well made with no harm to the planet. So we're basically spreading it out, the cost, and that only is not enough. Again, I know how to add little bits of, value. So it's basically adding little pockets of value. So then it's very hard to compare. So that's the reason we have the refresh at any time. Once you're a subscriber, at any point of time, you can swap your clothes out if they go short, because kids grow. That's the other problem. If you buy once, you don't know when you have to replace them, and so on.
If I may intervene, there are 3 others with raised hands, and we have 6 more minutes. So
we can take it off.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great discussion. Shrikant, please go ahead.
Great points, and thanks for the opportunity here. So my question is, how much weightage does market validation have when you're trying to raise money with the VCs? Because, my product being very niche, right? Not every VC would understand what I'm trying to address. So just doing a good market analysis and providing that data and the concept and the idea itself, is that good enough? Or are they looking for some validation with a specific industry or a specific area? Because, it's a chicken and egg problem, right? I need money to build this. And who would give me an opportunity if I'm not making it irresistible? And how do I make it irresistible? I have to go through the maturity curve. It's going to take time and money and effort. So how do I find that, the secret sauce, right? Based on your experience with similar products, let's say niche areas. I know it's...
Steven, do you want to go first? Or
yeah.
Do you want me to go?
I'll answer that briefly. I think that your first question about how important is that market analysis, it's very important. The more you can build your hypothesis based on data, the better it is. That doesn't mean that you're going to be right, and that's the way the twists and turns of producing a niche product may take you in different directions. If you can develop some sort of conceptual or MVP, minimum viable product, and show some value, and you can show some customers and some reactions there that are generally positive, I think you've got to give something to get something in return. And that's the way it ties together. You don't have to spend a whole bunch of money, but it's proof of concept. If there's a smart way to do proof of concept, maybe the more people you speak to and you explain a story and say, would you buy this? Bottom line, for everyone who's an entrepreneur, do you have people who would buy your service, and at what price? That's what it comes down to. And that's what investors looking at. looking at. It's a payback period. It's that simple, right? The ideas may be complex, the delivery may be complex, but for most investors, it's simple. How much is it going to cost me? How long am I going to invest in you? And what's my exit strategy? Those are the three main questions. And they may love the idea and know about your particular industry or product niche or market, but you really do want to get as close as possible to convincing someone who may or may not be aware or of the product that you're trying to do. And the other piece of this equation is, if you can also show scalability of the product, and if you're lucky, the investor's already going to be looking at your product to scale it within their own portfolio, so that what they're buying, whatever that investment's costing them, they already know that they can increase the value several times over before the end of your conversation. They're already having those numbers in mind. So they may not even tell you this, but that's why they're talking to you. They probably trash your product, trash the idea. A lot of them do that. I've been in front of investors doing that, but I also knew why they did it, because they wanted to buy it as low as possible. But yes, proof of concept, good market research, robust numbers. Then again, you may be wrong on some aspects because they are assumptions, but build a good assumptions model. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Steve.
I just want to quickly add, so everything that Steven said is true. Just to add a point that how important it is to validate your value proposition to your customer. If you can make your customers happy, if you can make them your supporters, that's already a good way to start. It's a good path. If you come into your investors and say, hey, I have this many customers, or we didn't have anything, we just started with prototype, but they're already loving it, they want it, they need it. The customer feedback that you can get is super important, because that's what investors, they'll get a hunch, like, is there something or not? So if you come in and say, hey, we built this product based on what customers told us they needed, they wanted, and a lot of times the customers will pay you too, depends on what type of customer it is. But for businesses, if you're really solving their problem, they will put the money in it. So there's another way. Just focus on your customers, get the core value proposition, work with them to build the solution. And that's just the very beginning, a very good path for you to start to talk to your investors.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anjan, quickly your question.
Thanks, Amit. So would love to hear your thoughts because for Wealth Next Gen, right, initially we're thinking targeting the financial advisors platforms to help them better engage with the younger generations, that's B2B. And then we're also thinking, hey, there's quite a bit of value, just reach out directly to consumers, retail, right? So there's a B2C, where think about the wealth front was acquired recently by UBS for 1.3 billion. They were more direct retail versus one of the startups that's already unicorn facing the advisors that kind of can work too. So love to hear your thoughts in terms of the nuances and particularly in terms of the go-to-market strategies for B2B versus B2C.
Well, the short answer is that these are the two different strategies with a different set of problems and challenges. I think if you're asking this question, it tells me that you need to do more market research. And the research, number one, with customer interviews on both sides with the profiles, just the general market estimates, opportunity, penetration. So you can actually do the exercise of a sense of like putting the comparison metrics of B2C, B2B versus, on the different characteristics on the penetration, adoption, cost to implement, time, sales cycle, like everything, all those like things, and to just get the gut sense to see if you're completely either go one way or the other. But yes, different set of, it's just a different markets, different strategies. And it's, since you know your business, we don't, it would be good for you to do that exercise to actually understand, but we can talk more offline on this topic.
Okay, great. I will reach out. Thank you.
Yeah. I know we are just over that. We had just one more raised hand from Eric. Is it okay, Alina, Stephen, if we take that? Eric, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to find out what you're looking for in terms of go-to-market strategy. So again, just like Amy said, it came up a bunch of times, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on what it is that you'd be looking at from us.
So would you like me to answer that? Okay, so I think it's really important to tell a story. And the story, what happens is as you talk about your business and what you're trying to do and who are your customers, there has to be a reflection of that market reality in your finances. So the whole package is, when I look at your story, number one, it has to be compelling. Number two, it has to be understanding. And what the market analysis does is it brings the granularity and the tangibility to your potential product and market. If most folks will look at the story, if they like the story, they'll look at your financials. And if your financials don't make sense, there's a dissonance between the market, what market research you've done, and how you've equated that to how you're going to build and execute your plan. I just met with a spirits manufacturer, and I looked at their numbers, and I noticed that when you compare to like kind and quality companies in the market, their estimates were way above. And in the pandemic, specific spirits dropped 7 to 10% in sales. When I see that, I realize that they haven't done enough tangible research on their target market and their strategy to be able to achieve certain values. And probably given that their revenue-based numbers are off, their cost numbers are probably off, and I'll send it back and say, you guys need to be a little bit more specific, more tangible in what you're trying to do. So I think it's a combination of the visual story, who you talk to, are there people who are willing to buy your product, have people bought your product, have people tested it, can you show financials that work with your story? If it's somewhat seamless, then you have a product that someone will be willing to invest in. That's a different story completely. There's a lot of someones out there. The question is, which is the match for you, and at what price? How much of your company will you give away for what you're planning to do? I hope that answers your question.
Very informative.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone, especially Alina, Steve, for your time, and for all the founders. Just a quick update on the Wednesday founder check-in, not tomorrow, but for the next week. Alina has very graciously volunteered to be part of that session and answer more such questions that you might have. And Steve, you're welcome to join in as well if you have the opportunity. And thanks. I think it was a great session, a good uptick in the quality of presentations from the last time, and I'm sure as we proceed in this journey, it will just improve. So thanks a lot, and have a wonderful rest of the day and a nice week ahead.
Thank you,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you
Alina.
so much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Bye-bye.